Welcome to the Scale with Strive podcast, a place where you come to listen to some of the world's most influential leaders within the SaaS industry. Your host today is myself, Dylan Hoyle, and Strive's founder, Adam Richardson. We're very pleased to welcome Tammy Moskites from CyAlliance. Tammy is an ex-CISO for the likes of Venafi, Home Depot, and Time Warner Cable, and now runs a consultancy for early-stage security startups. Today's conversation was a little bit different to our typical, but some of my key takeaways being Tammy's thoughts on what is keeping a CISO up at night, what parameters a founder can look at to help determine product market fit, and how founders can successfully drive growth at the top of the sales funnel in today's market, and how we tailor that messaging towards CISOs. Let's dive in. Tammy, it's amazing to have you on the Scale with Strive podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. Obviously, I've been familiar with your background for quite some time due to your portfolio, but I'll let you introduce yourself to the viewers.
Well, thanks for having me first and foremost. A little bit about me, Tammy Moskites. A lot of people are afraid to say my last name, so don't be. It's not as bad once you hear it. I have been a career CISO forever. It seems like I've been in the industry over 30 years. But super excited. CISO at Time Warner Cable, Home Depot. Was at Huntington Bank. I was at Accenture for a while. I worked for a technology company as their CIO and CISO at Venafi for a lot of years. And I started my own company about 4.5 years ago, which is CyAlliance, which I'm super excited about.
Sure. And you were obviously with JP Morgan back in 2002 as well. So you've had quite a varied background as a CISO.
Yeah, it was actually Bank One then. They got acquired by JP Morgan Chase. I was the business information security officer there for technology.
Amazing. And then obviously skip forward to 2019 and CyAlliance was started. Give us a bit of an understanding, I guess, of like what CyAlliance does.
Well, CyAlliance was kind of a brainchild of mine that I've been thinking about like forever, of something I've wanted to do. And when I left Accenture, I started CyAlliance with one premise, and that was trying to bring the best of the best to the CISO community. Because I know from the other side of the table, I was always challenged of, who do I trust? Who can I talk to? What things can I do on a day in and day out basis, and know that the advice that was given to me is something that I can use. Right. So that's kind of where CyAlliance really started. But CyAlliance as a whole, our company, again, like I said, is 4.5 years old. But what we do are three primary things. About 10% of our business is just focusing on job placement, from engineers to CISOs to CIOs. The other 10% is professional services. We do a lot of going in and out of companies and talking about everything of how to talk to a board, organizational restructuring project, pen testing, those types of things. And then the other 80% is the portfolio that you were referring to. Is some of them are seed investment companies that I've actually invested in at a seed level. Some are companies that joined the CyAlliance portfolio. Some are very early stage, some are not. So we have a really good mix of products and companies that we're proud to, have under the CyAlliance umbrella.
Amazing. And I guess like despite only starting in 2019, the portfolio, like it is really impressive, right? Adaptive Shield, Grip Security, Opus Security, Cycode, Kado, like the list genuinely goes on. So I guess to work with that amount of businesses at that caliber in such a short space of time is obviously credit to yourselves and what you guys are doing over there. I guess just to give the viewers a bit of an understanding then. So you were an ex-CISO, obviously now operating with CyAlliance as a fractional CISO, offering many different types of support. When, say, you work with an organization, well, what's the sort of typical involvement that you'd have within a business when you initially start a partnership?
Well, we don't call ourselves fractional CISOs anymore. At least I don't. But there's a host of reasons for that, but mostly is because just because of the amount of liability there is in the market, just for a general CISO within an organization, we aren't covered by their insurance coverages and other things coming in as a fractional CISO. So we really refer to ourselves more as executive advisors or things like that at that level. It's a little CYA thing, but it is what it is, right? We've seen a lot of crazy things in the CISO lawsuit market over the last few years. But what we do, just like a part of what we do, is just going in and helping folks identify where their projects, what level of in their portfolio, the things that need to be done. Some CISOs are brand new, coming into an organization and they just need a step back and an ear to listen to. So we'll come in and talk to them about things like that. We'll come in and look at their organizational structure and see where they have gaps. Right. We'll also help them with RFPs, RFIs, and they're not always within our portfolio companies too. I mean, we host like you were saying, we have a whole bunch of companies under our purview, but we'll come in and we'll provide them the best level of service, the best customers, the best opportunities, the best vendors that will fit their needs.
Hmm. Nice. And you've already had an exit within your portfolio, right?
Yes. So some of our portfolio exits are ones that we've invested in, and some, like I said, our investment companies, when those exit are always awesome because obviously that's a bigger bang for our buck. There's companies that actually, pay to be part of our portfolio. So there's the other side of it. They join us, right, to help them grow, right, to help them grow in the market. And so whether to watch them get acquired or watch them IPO, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. We've seen it like getting into a business early, helping them build the plane while it's flying, essentially, going through all those challenges, taking numerous punches to the face, right? Going through that whole journey to then obviously get the reward of an exit, IPO, or acquisition at the end of the day. In terms of, I guess, some of your first partnerships back in like 2019, 2020. Obviously, it was a bit of a turbulent time over the last few years. We've had COVID and economic downturn, essentially. Like, I guess what's a bit of a story about maybe one of your partners, whether you've helped a founder or a company, how you've supported them and how they've grown, I guess, despite any challenges that they've faced?
Yeah, that's a great question because, when I look at when we started in 2019, it was, I always say, 6 months BC, before COVID, right? So we're at 6 months BC. We start a company really focused on helping organizations and working with boards and working with all these companies all over the place. And then all of a sudden, a lot of your business stops. It just stops. March 13th, everything go home, right? That message goes out to go home. So, we're home and then I'm trying to figure out what does home mean? And so we had some initial partnerships with some companies and our one of our biggest and first primary partnerships was with a company called Risk IQ. And we worked with them through, growing their pipe, helping them get their message out. We started doing virtual events. I partnered with Buffalo Trace Distillery and the infamous Freddie Johnson there, the bourbon guy. I mean, we had, 30 plus people on drinking bourbon throughout all of COVID, which was awesome. But the point I was trying to get is we closed so many deals with them. It's like we brought so many amazing CISO leaders to them, and they got to learn about them, even if it was over a glass of bourbon or two, right? But what ended up coming on the other end is obviously they were acquired, right? And so that big acquisition for them was outstanding. It was exciting to watch a company literally grow so rapidly fast, and within 18 months, have so much in their pipe and so much closed and like I said, they just killed it. So like I said, it's sort of like your kids, when they're growing up and you're watching them do this. Oh, he walked. Oh, he went to school. Oh, he rode a bike or whatever it is. I always think of even my employees back from bazillion years ago. I always like, oh, they got a promotion. Oh, they got this. So it's the same thing. You just get excited and watching their brand become recognizable.
For sure. And I think like seeing the significant impact that someone like CyAlliance can have in a business is exciting. And the reality is you're guiding a lot of the time. You're not telling someone what to do, but more guiding them through ideas and the concepts. I think that best business is often done with a couple glasses of bourbon as well. It loosens the mood. I guess with Risk IQ, for an example, though, because obviously you partnered with them BC just before COVID. What were, I guess, some of the key challenges that they had to navigate? Because there was a lot during that time period.
Well, I think it was the message, right? Traditionally, we our companies or it's whether it's a startup or you know a company that's over 100 million in revenue. It's they want to get in front of people, right? So it was always that human interaction, that handshake, that trusted one-on-one type of thing, or getting in front of people to spread your message. We had to find new ways to spread your message, right? And still generate that interest to take another call. People were still trying to figure out Zoom, for goodness sakes. People are still trying to figure out how their kids were going to, eat lunch and breakfast, and they were still going to have to work in front of the screen and keep their company secure and protected. So it was all of those interactions and finding ways to get the sales team in front of the people they needed to get in front of. And I think we did a very good job of it. I think that most of the sales calls that we did take were very relaxed. It was a very different atmosphere, and most people we weren't all in suits and ties and whatever. We were in polos and t-shirts. It was a very relaxed.
Yeah. You lead us on to a really good point then, because it's now more prevalent than ever that getting the first meeting and driving real growth at the top of the funnel is like one of the biggest topics that I personally see with founders today. And I guess with that being said, like priority initiatives of CISOs and like quite senior security stakeholders have changed immensely over the last couple of years. I guess I want to come onto the messaging piece in a second, but with that being said, from like a priority initiative and like what is keeping a CISO up at night at the moment? I guess going into 2024, what are some of the biggest things that they're going to be focusing on?
Yeah, it's interesting. CyAlliance just pushed out our first quarter survey. So we've been gathering information. I'm not exactly sure how many responses we have, but what we did do is I extrapolated kind of an idea of we had a whole list of like, what are your top focus things for 2024? And it was interesting because last year when I was looking at this very similar things, people were worried about stuff around identity, ransomware. There was like the same things this year. The top three so far, because we're only halfway out with our survey. The top three that people have chosen or put other in was cloud security, AI threats, and security. And the other one that I was that came up on top, and these are the three that were like of a huge list. These are the three that floated to the top because they can choose a bunch of things or put in their own. Was third party risk and governance. Those are the top three so far.
And that's changed quite a lot from last year then.
Yeah, it really has. It's like, so when I look at this, third party risk and governance, I think about the amount of time they spend with security questionnaires and compliance questionnaires and also. So I'm thinking that, and the amount of ability of, from breaches and other things, how important it is for your connections with your partners and with your security partners or technology partners, that importance is finally bubbling up to the top because I think it's something that's kind of been, it's important, but right. But that's cloud AI. I thought the AI threat thing would be higher this year, but the third party privacy risk governance is way at the top.
And Tammy, just to qualify that, when you say the third party risk and governance, do you mean that them as an individual are third parties having to complete risk assessments and governance for partners of theirs, or you mean that how they risk and assess risk within their third party, like external partners?
That's great. So I asked some follow up on that. So, when they answer that. And so what it was both, right? Is like we want to know how like the third party questionnaires are the things that we're entering to make it faster, to make sure it's more accurate so they understand our risk. But in converse is looking at the other way and saying, hey, we're connecting to you. We want to make sure it's safe. So it's both ways. And the privacy and governance pieces also are around compliance, initiatives like, PCI, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that whole compliance piece, I think, that kind of mixes it all into one. The way I broke it out, where people wrote comments, was, we need to improve our third-party risk questionnaires. We need to improve our internal risk profile around, risk acceptance and things like that, and around controls and compliance. So those were a
It's
lot of things.
interesting that that's came up because I had a conversation with the CRO just before Christmas, and they were just about to land one of their biggest deals. It was a seven-figure multi-year deal, and one of the processes that we currently go through to get it over the line just before Christmas was that every single employee within the organization had to pass a cybersecurity assessment, and it was positioned as like a 20-minute multiple choice Q&A, but it was actually taking the employees like 3 hours to do it. So the whole organization had to complete and be signed off from a security perspective before they could actually close the deal with the vendor.
That's crazy. And I get it, but it's a lot of work, right? There's just a lot of stuff around it. I mean, even in my past lives, when my security and risk team, they were always doing risk assessments internally for like people that wanted to do projects internally to assess the security risks. Or we had, just like you said, when we were trying to buy new product, or vice versa, we're partnering with somebody that's going to be connecting to our world. The amount of people that I have allocated to that was crazy, right? So I think people are just trying to find ways to utilize a lot of the information they already have, right? And be able to populate it in a way that it's true, accurate, right? And being able to be faster, more agile.
Yeah.
And like the three things then that are important, I guess, for CISOs going into 2024: cloud security, the governance risk and compliance piece, and the AI threats within security. I guess that's their three priority initiatives for CISOs going forward. And I think a big part of what CyAlliance will bring to the table is really being able to tailor in our messaging so it like really does resonate with CISOs and security stakeholders. Like, let's say I'm a founder of a seed stage security company and I'm just determining my product market fit. I really need to like tighten my messaging and making sure that it does resonate. What are some of the things that you're suggesting to these founders?
Ugh, project, product market fit. Gosh, market is everything, right? I mean, people just forget that market trumps everything, right? You get your market wrong, you get your ICP wrong, right? It requires you to take a step back and rethink. So, I always tell folks, especially, I mean, we have some early stage that are companies that we're invested in that aren't even, they're still in stealth mode, right? So when we're talking to them, it's like, all right, well, you find your initial target market, right? What is your initial target market? And then, oh, well, it's going to be these people. And I'm like, well, do they feel the most pain? Right. And they're like, well, I don't know. Well, did you ask anybody? I mean, you can have great ideas, you can have great things, right? But you really got to find that pain point to make sure that your product market fit truly fits, right? So maybe your first instinct or your first way of thinking about the market might not be the right one. So it's really important to go out there and do that discovery, talk to CISOs, talk to people in the market, making sure people you like, people you don't like, I don't care what it is, but get that candid feedback, very open ended questions. And then you have to develop your value. And I think that whole big portion of it to find your fit is really in that, right? Is what is truly your ICP? Maybe I say, right? Because it could change because of that. But also, making sure you're doing that extensive discovery to make sure that your value is truly your value and that your pains actually, their pains actually meet your gain, right? So you're going to have to monetize it in a way where you're able to actually, take your product or your prototype or your whatever you have and actually give that initial feature set to somebody to see the problem. And I think that, especially working early on, that product market fit, that piece of it is so important. And, you have to be lean. You have to make sure you're focusing on making sure you're testing it with potential customers and people you trust. And then take a step back and say, are we doing the right thing? And I think that those are the parts that we work a lot with folks on, looking at their roadmap, saying, does this make sense? Are you focusing on the right thing? Is this product viable to the market? Right. And I think that that's the scariest thing to ask, right? You're telling somebody that's like, really vested their blood, sweat, and tears into something that they're extremely passionate about. but it's hard to make sure that your prototype or your product gets out there to something that they actually need, right? A want is nice, a need is easier to sell.
You highlighted something there as well, right? Is that a lot of these founders are extremely, one, passionate about what they provide, but two, like they've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into it. Do you think that that sometimes can, I guess, limit a business because they are so passionate, they have so much emotional involvement in the sale and in the business and in the product? Do you think that sometimes is a bit of a, it can be quite negative, I guess?
Well, it can if you take it personal. Right. So if you have a company and you're starting your company and you're passionate and you're sitting there, I'm going to sell this widget and I'm only going to sell this widget because this is the thing they need to solve. But I'm trying to explain to you, it's like, listen, this is great. But as a CISO or as a director of incident response or whatever your market is, I need to also see this. And while you're giving me the pencil to write, it's not doing me any good if I don't have any paper, right? So it's that whole thing of giving me what I need to be successful. There's a lot of pencils, right? I need a solution. And that's where the problem falls in. And a lot of early stage companies that are stealth, like really, trying to figure it out, that's where their biggest challenge is, right? They have to not take it personal. It's business. It's a business. And so, depending on whether it's your first company or your fifth company, you learn through the process of, you know, hey, the first time I was extremely passionate about the pencil or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's really creating that prototype, that thing that I want to see, but being open to feedback.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, one thing that impressed me about a founder recently, there was a founder of a privileged access management company. And we were talking about what he's done over the last 6 months in terms of some of the customers that he's met. And the amount of opportunities that he personally withdrew himself from because he didn't feel like he was a fit for that particular customer. So like having that emotional awareness and that understanding of the customer's pain where it's like, I don't think we're the right fit for you right now, but let's touch base maybe in 6 or 12 months when things have materialized a little bit. So it's having that understanding that sometimes you're not going to be a fit for everyone, but that's the process and story about determining that product market fit.
Right. And that's a lot with our CyAlliance portfolio. We work with a lot of different companies, as you know. So when you talk through who we work for and who we work with and who we're invested in, depending, it doesn't matter, right? I treat everybody the same. Sometimes they're not a fit. We've had, partners in the past that have, either, joined us or rolled off or got IPO'd or whatever it is. But sometimes they're not a good fit for our partners, right? They might not be a lot, they might be a Fortune X company. You go in thinking that you're going to bring this huge cloud security solution to them because they're a large company, but they're only 10% cloud. Well, they're not going to be a good fit for what you're trying to bring to bear, right? But I think it's being flexible and being mature enough to sit there and say, we are not a good fit for you is a great thing because you know what? CISOs don't stay everywhere for very long, right? They cycle through. They're here 18 months, 2 years. They go to a different company. Next time I go, I was talking to Tammy and she was talking about this particular product. I said it didn't fit there, but we're like 90% cloud here. That would be perfect, right? So still being open to the conversations to educate is important. Just they might not be the perfect fit now, but having, like I was saying before, having those open and candid conversations with potential and maybe future potential customers is critical.
Yeah.
Just on that, Tammy, I think, having an open-minded CISO that's, open to have a non-committal introduction call just to understand more about your product, what it is that you're offering, what problems that you solve, sounds great. But if I'm a CISO and in a market within, say, cybersecurity, which, let's be frank, there are hundreds and hundreds of vendors out there that are constantly approaching CISOs on a day-to-day basis, some doing a good job, some doing a bad job. Like, what is it that's going to stand out to get that initial meeting to try and establish if there's any kind of synergy between the vendor and the CISO? Because I suppose it's really hard to cut through the noise in a market that's heavily saturated with security products.
Yeah, I knew for a fact that nothing I hated more, quite candidly, than a million people coming at me. Um, Quick story, and then I'll get into your thing about how I did. Is that
Love a
my
story.
that my admin back in one of my roles? I used to have vendors call me like a million times. I never even heard my phone ring half the time. She would pick it up so fast, right? And so we had created an H no list. She didn't swear at all. So we couldn't call it a hell no list. So we called it the H no list. And so we created like people I wanted to talk to and people I didn't. So she had this H no list on her desk. And so if it was somebody on that list, she'd say no. Or if it's somebody that she wasn't sure, she would put it on the I don't know list, right? And then on Thursday, she would give me kind of this list at the end of the week. Here's the people that called. It was literally at the end of the week because Fridays I left open to vendors I wanted to speak to in the morning. So we would schedule them for a couple weeks out after that. So it was funny because, it's like I would have like this many people to talk to, this many people maybes, and then like this many people on the HMO list, because those are the people that repetitively called me. And the reason why I mention that is just like what you're saying is that we get bombarded with vendor calls. And that was another reason why I started CyAlliance, right? It's like I wanted to be that trusted advisor. I've been in their seats many times, right? But I also know the market pretty well and I partner with a lot of vendors. So, with me, when I work with my vendors partners or my portfolio partners or whatever, the best thing about it is that they'll sit there and say, Tammy, I really need to speak with some folks in these industries, or vice versa. I'll sit there and say, okay, you're focusing on this product. I said, I think you need to talk to like three strong CISOs in finance or three strong in retail, and I'll help facilitate that. And it's not always the same people. Like I have a big network. And so I'm very fortunate that the CyAlliance portfolio is large enough where we have a lot of CISOs and directors and a lot of different levels. Um, but you can't exhaust your CISO partnerships. So what happens sometimes is that you'll bring some CISOs into your advise as an advisory board, which is great because you can leverage their partnerships, but those become stale. So it's stuff that you don't want to be asking the same three CISOs over and over and over and over and over again, right? For help.
If you go back to the same people over and over again, you sort of create that like echo chamber of like
Right,
bias and their views. You don't get that more of a holistic view of the market and new ways of
right.
thinking.
Exactly. So this way, it's like when I understand personally the way that I work and Silence works is we work so closely with especially with our early stage startup companies, but with all, don't get me wrong, but we really try to understand the market or that target market they're trying to hit, right? And then get them really smart people or voices in the market. There was one product that's very, very technical, right? And the CISOs love it, but there's some CISOs that are extremely more technical than others, right? What's better than me being able to call up, Joe, for not, targeting somebody out there, just Joe, call Joe because Joe not only is an amazing CISO, but he is so freaking technical that he's going to be able to provide you that, oh, this sucks type of thing, or this is great. And you want that feedback, but I also stress, like we talked earlier, you got to be able to, you know, um, take the hits to the face sometimes, right? It you just gotta listen. Listening is so important. I always tell people, shh, don't say anything, just listen. So it helps.
Nice. Nice, good stuff. Well, I guess moving on to like a next portion of it, right? I think we've discussed obviously some of the things that CISOs are going to find really, really important going into 2024. And again, let's say like I'm a founder of an early stage cybersecurity company. I need to start planning ahead for 2024. We've obviously mentioned the roadmap and what it could potentially look like. In your opinion, Tammy, what are some of the things that's important for me to get ahead of? What are some of the potential threats that I need to understand and I guess plan accordingly going forward?
Well, trying to plan your roadmap. So you're saying you're just coming out of stealth
So
because it depends,
let's say
right? It depends. Like there's one thing I'll sit there and say, make sure you look nice, right? Other one's like be casual. I just kind of need to know where you're coming out of. Where are you at?
so let's say I landed seed 12 months ago I'm in the position of landing my first 10 to 15 customers, looking to get, let's say we're at 800K IRR, we're looking to push over that 1 million line, and it's now about scalability in regards to our processes and looking to land that Series A.
Okay, so we're going a little bit back into product market fit again, right? So when you're looking at your next 12 months of where you are, what we do is we'll actually sit down and say, is your product viable? Is it something that those customers wanted, right? What does your pipeline currently look like? And let's look at your actual market of the things that you've already sold, right? So we start identifying industry, we start identifying ICP, who are the best people to talk to, and then we have to go back and reiterate the product market fit again, and making sure that the feedback you have and the ability to scale is going to be there, because nothing's worse than going to that next level and not being ready to rock and roll, because that's when you're going to hit the accelerator. That's when all of a sudden you're working with folks like ourselves that we're going to get you, you're going to get in front of a lot of people. You're going to start doing a lot of marketing initiatives, getting more out into the, maybe whether it's dinners or events or speaking engagements at conferences and things like that. So it's really starting to make sure make sure you're still staying lean enough, right? Just because you're getting more money doesn't mean you spend it all, right? So it's really taking all that and then look at that build, measure, learn cycle, so it's sort of like, add where you need to, learn where you need to, and adjust where you need to. And then after all that, you just got to focus on traction. I think that what we've seen with one of our partners that's just getting ready to go into actually come out of stealth, but they're coming out of stealth, but they've been in seed round for a year. Okay, so it's kind of the same, but it's not, right? Because they're actually going to try to build their market. But it's important, if you're not getting traction, right? Even with the 800, K in ARR, that's not a ton of money depending on where you're at, right? You make sure your product is viable, right? Just make sure that you're confident your product is viable. It's a tough call, especially if you've invested a lot of personal, investment, right? But make sure that when you're moving ahead, be honest, right? Be objective, and then focus on getting in front of the people you need to. If your product's there, your market's there, like I said earlier, market trumps everything. It's time to get in front of the people you need to. And so it's going to be a matter of building that roadmap of what's my marketing initiative. Marketing is really big for you after that round, because this is where when you get that A round of money, you got to use it in a way where you're bringing pipe to get that next round of money. So you have to have pipe and you got to make sales.
And Tammy, you mentioned traction there a couple of times. It seems like something that you feel is important, particularly at this stage. Like, what are the kind of things you'd be advising to founders that are really going to move the needle from a traction perspective? So, like, if we're having these conversations and we're working together, and you're saying, right, Adam, we need to get some traction now. Now's the time. What initiatives would you be sort of advising me, in which direction you'd be encouraging me to go in, that's going to really help move the needle in that respect?
Well, usually traction, there's two reasons why traction isn't happening. Your product isn't good or good enough. I mean, I'm not saying it sucks. I'm just saying it might not be good enough yet, right? So that's where you have to take a step back and say, is your product, ready for prime time, right? Think about it. Think of the customers you have. Think about the amount of tickets. So think about the traction you have with your product. And then the other piece of your traction is just in your brand marketing. It's hard to sell something if nobody knows who you are, right? So it's I think that the executives I work with, it's especially when we host like these, we host very large dinner events at CyAlliance. And the first thing I always say is like, hey, there's 30 people sitting there for dinner. I was like, okay, of the 30 people sitting here for dinner, how many people have heard of this company before? And then people look around and maybe 2 people raise their hand. That's a problem. If you're already gotten your A round and 2 people out of 30 in a city, the size of Charlotte or Atlanta or Columbus, Ohio, for God's sakes, 2 people raises their hand, right? And we have 80% of the people in the room are executives. That's a problem, right? So that traction is, okay, let's focus on where we need to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck.
Yeah. We saw a huge spike in demand for product marketing over the last couple of years, particularly for that, like getting your products out there, getting people to know who you are. So that I definitely say that aligns to a lot of the market trends that we saw from a hiring perspective over the last sort of 18, 24 months.
Yeah, and I think that what gets scary for startups especially is they they want to put their money into the product. And I get it. They have to, right? The product has to be viable. But they have to put money into the market. And it's sort of like, oh my gosh, you're going to charge, whatever bazillion dollars for a dinner or for a conference, or you got to make sure you're hitting where your target market is, but also, making sure that you have a budget in that, first 12 months that we were talking about, that 12 months, make sure you have a marketing budget and don't strip it down to where, you're not getting in front of anybody. Make sure you're getting in front of as many people as you can. Make sure your website is good. Make sure your LinkedIn posts are good. Make sure you're getting blogs out, go out, anything that's exciting, get it in the press, get it into magazines, go sign up for awards, whatever it is. The more that your name gets out there and your brand gets out there, the better the recognition and the opportunity for the CISO to take the meeting.
And where have you seen like best bang for your buck in that respect? Like if it was your money and you were taking your product to market, I know there's a lot of like sweeping generalizations here, but where do you typically see best bang for buck from a marketing perspective?
Um, I hate saying it depends, but it depends. If you're US driven, right? I think that where people make the biggest mistakes is going to some of initially going to some of the very, very, very large conferences and not having any more of a presence than a little cube in a corner somewhere where nobody walks. You spend a lot of money on a lot of those things. I go to a lot of conferences. I speak at a lot of conferences. But those are the areas that I tend to walk to. But they're usually the guys over there that are playing cards in the corner because they don't have people over there talking. But they just spent, $50,000 on nothing. Where you could have spent $50,000 on, maybe three really expensive dinners and got in front of 90 executives. So you had one-on-one time, basically, right? Personal one-on-one time. So it's really, making sure that you are getting something in return. You just don't want to go to a dinner, you know, kissing babies and shaking hands and then walking away and never getting an opportunity to talk to them. So it's really working more full cycle in partnership. I think you get biggest bang for your buck there. LinkedIn, like I said, it's easy to put posts out there, put posts, put pictures, put studies, put whatever, but always make sure you're branding it. The biggest thing that I've seen lately is that people send out this really great stuff on LinkedIn, right? But the only place that their company's listed is in a little thing in the bottom, but they should shove their freaking logo right in the middle of it, right? I mean, it's what you need to do. You got to get your name out there, your logo out there. So some of it can be free-ish, right? But it's really balancing how much you want to spend.
And with the gaining traction piece, and obviously, again, I'm the founder of a seed company at 800K looking to get to the next piece, which is scalability. It's really important, I guess, at that stage to be objective as opposed to subjective with it. Do you have any like quantifiable metrics which would determine whether we're ready to jump, ready to I guess, go to the next phase?
Well, not metrics per se, but there are some telltale signs, right? One is, do you have a lot of open tickets in your seed round with your current customers? Is there a lot of open items, right? So if you have a lot of issues and a lot of open items that you still need to address, those are things that are really going to need to be focused on first and foremost, right? Because you don't want to come out and just sit there and say, oh, we have a great product, but oh, we still are working on this. Oh, we're still working on this, right? So if you're the best thing since sliced bread, you really need to make sure you're coming out there and still being able to deliver that. What I've seen in the past, not with one of my particular partners, but with a partner that I was working with, I was helping them out and I was at their event and I was talking with them and people were raising their hand and they were just after getting their A round and they're raising their hand and they're like, well, you do this, right? And they go, oh, yeah, we do it very well. They, well, can you do it in this? Oh, no, we can't do it in GCP. Oh, can you do it in Azure? No, we only can do our stuff in AWS. And all of a sudden, everybody's just like, why are we here? Like it was. So the thing is that you got to make sure that if you're saying that you're the best thing in cloud, you got to support cloud. If you're doing, if you're the best thing in identity, you got to support all identity, right? So it's all those kinds of things that I think that is that traction piece, right?
Sure, sure. And I guess with all that this being said, right, what we've discussed today is all aspects that CyAlliance and yourself bring to your portfolio. And I guess if there are any founders or people wanting to be founders listening to this, I think they'd be interested. Like, let's say you've got obviously your portfolio. How do you position companies in your portfolio to your network of CISOs and customers? How does that interaction
Yeah, well, there's different ways. Depends on where they are in the maturity life cycle, of course. But we do everything from, we'll host dinners for them, right? And so that's one way. Another way is they all of our partners. I sit down, I go through their pipeline, I go through roadmaps, I do quarterly discussions with every single one of our portfolio partners. But I also want to understand who they want to talk to, right? So we're fortunate enough to have a network where we're not always reaching out to those, like I said earlier, the same 3 or 4 people all the time, right? We have hundreds of people in every city or every major city. But we'll sit there and we'll talk and we'll sit there and say, okay, you want to talk to somebody in retail? No, and sometimes I'll kick back and say, no, retail's not where you need to talk. Let's talk to somebody at, I don't know, Campbell Soup. Or let's talk to somebody at Nordstrom, or let's talk to, what, gaming might be better for you. So let's give, Dave Tamburski a call over at the Win or whatever, somebody over at MGM. So it's really just trying to get people in front of the people they should be in front of. It's not heartening to do. But the people that we work with and who I've, associated with for over the years, I mean, am very fortunate that they trust me enough where I can sit there and, consciously say, hey, can you talk to this company? I don't need you to necessarily buy it, but just provide guidance or just provide feedback. And we do that all the time. I have some CISOs in Australia, because some of my folks are focused on Asia Pac right now, and they are the most candid people I know. So they come out and they just sit there and say, bam, 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 bam. I was like, wow, you killed them. Yeah, so we just good. But like I said, don't take it personal. But then we also have that other side where we have CISOs that are looking for a specific product, and they come directly to us and say, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for. Do you have anybody in your portfolio that we can talk to? And so it's a win-win.
Just on that, Tammy, I know having a warm introduction through someone like yourself, it goes a long way in terms of like buying credibility for the vendor, for example. But I think one of the things I'd be keen to understand is around like buyer behavior of a CISO. So like last year, the things that I was constantly hearing from speaking to people in my network was around how buyer journeys and buyer behaviors has changed, and the influence that a CFO now has on the purchasing of enterprise level software. That sales cycles have been extended, and how CFOs are so heavily involved in that decision making. But what in terms of like buyer behaviors from a CISO perspective, like what are the things that the patterns and trends that you see, or like predictions that you see for 2024 in terms of the buying behavior of a CISO?
Yeah. Last year it slowed down quite a bit, actually. Sales cycles extended. Things got hung up a little bit longer, more evaluation of what needs to be bought and what really doesn't, needs versus wants, kind of a thing like we talked about earlier. And also the economy really affected a lot of the buying habits in 2023, especially in the United States. So I think that that's what we're seeing. Our CISOs taking a step back. CFOs are heavily involved. They always have been heavily involved, but now they're more maniacally involved, which always isn't a win because they don't understand. They don't understand the risk that it's associating or the need. I'm not referring to wants, but the risk and the need for something is really important. Seeing sales cycles in most cases, and a lot of our partners double the amount of time to get something from from initial meeting to close. For 2024, I'm starting to see the purse strings open up a little bit more. Seeing people saying, "Hey, we have to get this stuff done this year." We kind of, we kind of did X, Y, and Z during COVID, right? And then the past year and a half or whatever, we're really trying to regather our staff and figure out where we need to be, right? Some companies are requiring people to come back to the office. There was just a lot of mix. Now where people are kind of taking a step back for 2024 is we kind of figure out where we need to be, office, hybrid, whatever. Now we have to really focus on the security importance. I'm seeing budgets are a little bit flatter this year. I don't see a lot of people's monies going up. However, I'm seeing a very, very strong need of prioritization of project portfolio. And that's across the whole board. I'm talking about IT, security projects, et cetera. They're getting a much higher look, and they're getting a prioritization at a very different level. I see also that boards of directors are also reviewing more and more project portfolios than ever.
And are line items on people's budgets changing? Because I think that was a trend that we were starting to see with talking to customers, that line items on people's budgets had typically been the same for a set amount of time. However, now there's a lot of threats at code level, for example. It's huge, the DevSecOps market now. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, the monies that I'm seeing that have been bucketed out have actually before. Remember, you had a CIO, and then you kind of had a budget, and then they gave some money to the CISO. And now we're seeing, over the last few years, right? The CISO has their own bucket of money, as I call it, right? But now what I'm seeing is a lot of projects are commingled because of the necessity. So you're getting funding from the business area, the IT area, and the security areas that are getting bundled together. So they're actually having more money to spend on something to address some of those risks. The amount of risks coming in are coming in fast and furious, but the prioritization of what they can do first, second, and third has to still be addressed to be successful. I can, you know, I can give you, $20 million budget and you can go spend it all, but if you can't implement it all, then what's the use of spending all that money? So it's really using the program management offices, and especially in these larger organizations, that help you project prioritize. And then once I have the prioritization of what can logically be done for second and third, I'm seeing more of the PMO offices actually taking a proactive approach of helping these security and IT organizations prioritize their needs and focusing on like the resource allocation, because we're seeing layoffs, you're seeing leveling of staffing, so that, you got to make sure you can't, you always say do more with less. You can't always do more with less.
Sure, sure. Go on, Adam.
I was going to say that that's not even like just unique to security. We're seeing that across all the different verticals that, in some cases, if you're in a sales process with an organization, previously it was either vendor A or vendor B who were typically competing in the same space with a similar kind of product. Now that budget, you could be, a security vendor that's competing with a data vendor for a whole completely different project and initiative for that organization. So that's added a whole different layer of complexity from a sales perspective. It's the competition out there isn't as black and white as, two competitors within the same product vertical. It's like you're actually competing completely cross vertical now because budgets are so tight, and like you said, they're being, put into a central pot and then prioritize using central PMO offices.
Yeah, and I also see that, when you're talking a little bit about the larger projects, I'm starting to see that more and more is that, that a lot of companies are saying, okay, well, we have this transformational project, for lack of a better name for it, right? But we need this in the IT piece. Oh, we need this little security piece. Oh, well, we're going to have to work with the business development area in our company, or app dev in our companies to do this piece. And all of a sudden they have this huge project, but like you said, there's different technologies and they're all bidding on them as one project. That's hard to do because you don't ever have a good idea of how much of that budget that you're going to be able to get allocated to you. So if you're one of those companies, you have no idea where to go in with your pricing.
Yeah.
I always advise go in with nearly your best price. When that
And I guess just like sort of wrapping things up here, Tammy, I think if there are any viewers listening that would potentially like see benefit in the use of someone like CyAlliance. I've spoken to a number of leaders and founders and CEOs within your portfolio, and every single one of them just has absolute tremendous things to say about CyAlliance and the value that it does bring and what they did in the early stages of it. So if anybody is listening that is contemplating, the feedback on CyAlliance has been great.
Well, thanks for that. If they said anything bad, I'm always open for feedback. It's always good. There anybody could always reach out to me. First and foremost, anyone can reach out to me anytime. I try to read all my emails every day. I try to schedule time if founders want to talk or startups want to talk. I talk to them. Gosh, I can't tell you how many times during the week that I actually talk to people about where they want to go and what they want to do. So always willing to do that. But when you said about the feedback, when I was had my huge staffs, I mean, I had managed thousands of people over the years, and every single one-on-one at the end of my meeting, I always asked my staff, no matter what level, what could I do better? And they couldn't leave my office, and so I got a lot of really weird things said over the years. But the thing is that it's okay to ask what you can do better, even as a startup. Ask what could we be doing better for you? Because it's so important to get that feedback.
Nice, nice, and it says a lot about your humbleness as well, and desire to learn, even for someone who's been in the industry for as long as you have.
Oh,
And I guess tying it,
I messed up a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I haven't done everything right. Ask my husband; he'll tell you.
I'm sure I'd have a good conversation with your husband. But I guess just to tie it up on a couple of light-hearted questions, as we always do. For someone like yourself who's done this for quite some time, let's say Tammy was able to go to her younger self, you were just starting your career. What's the main piece of advice that you potentially give to yourself?
Early in my career, I used to take everything very personal. So if somebody sat there and said, "You did this good, but you could have done this better," I wouldn't sleep for 2 weeks. I'd sit there, "Well, what could have I done better? How come I didn't know that?" So what I would tell my younger self is just don't sweat the small stuff, right? That's just stuff, right? Focus on what you do the best, and just kill it, right? I just don't be offended. Just rock and roll. Have a good time. Do what you know, and be confident. Confidence is everything.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given in your career from someone?
Oh goodness. Well, there's some that just made me giggle that I can't say. But
Come on, you've got to tell us. You've got to tell us
I
one of them.
didn't
Come
I
on.
didn't prepare for that. But I did have a CEO tell me once. He says, "You're always going to work with assholes." He goes, "Just don't become one." And
I
Interesting.
I
like it.
and I laughed so hard because I could never I would never say his name, because everybody probably knows him very well. And but he always says that, and I think that, the other piece that another really good friend is that, you know, he goes, "Tammy," he goes, "the most important thing is that you must make sure that you're always focused on integrity and trust." He goes, "That is your personal brand." He goes, "And that's why people trust you because, first of all, I'm a shitty liar." Excuse me, you might want to cut out the shitty part. But I'm a rotten liar. You can edit that. Okay, I'm a rotten liar. But I think that that's why people like to work with me is because it's just I build my foundation on integrity and trust. Um, I mean, I've been married for 36 or 37 years now. So it's that integrity and trust piece. It's how we function. So that somebody else says that's your brand. So and that's what I've kind of grown myself on is that being my brand.
Amazing,
It's
amazing.
it's similar to some advice that I was giving Tammy, and I feel like we've really lowered the tone towards the end of this conversation, but I'm going to run with it anyway. So, um, I was having some difficulties with a consultant that worked for the business, and they were like arguably a top performer. And I was speaking to a mentor of mine about this individual, and I suppose the problems that they were causing within the organization, but also the revenue that they're bringing in. And he turned around to me and he says, "Adam, you'd rather have a hole than an asshole." So that was the decision maker, and that person's no longer with the business anymore. So, but yeah, apologies to the viewers for lowering the tone, but hopefully it's.
We did. We did, but it's we're so lucky. I feel so lucky in my career. I almost wish I started CyAlliance earlier, but I wasn't ready, right? It's just going all the way back is about being ready, right? Having the market ready for somebody like us to do what we do, if the timing's right. So, like I said, I can't thank you guys enough for the opportunity to come on and chat and like I said, relax a little bit more at the end than I probably should have. But
Have you've been drinking that bourbon we were talking about? Maybe we all should have had a glass of that before we got going.
I have my Eeyore coffee mug and I'm drinking coffee.
That's not an Irish coffee, is it, Tammy?
No, it's not. It's not.
It's been a pleasure to have you on. I think there's a lot of people who are going to see extreme value from this conversation. Your career has gone in so many different ways, and there's so many different ways and areas that you can add value. So thank you very much for talking us all through it. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want more information about the podcast, head over to our website, Scale with Strive.